I think it comes down to about 30 bucks a week. So if you figure what, I don't know, we we're borderline, we're vegetarians for 10 years, and we kind of fell off the bandwagon, so, but we still stick to that pretty muchly, so that's the bulk of our diet, and yeah. We,
Well, I think it's a good idea, we're gonna put up some greens and, canning.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't done it in a while, but I just got
Some of the bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
supply chains being what they are.
Yeah, I'm on a lot of forums that deal with like supply chain, like people that are actual supply chain managers and stuff, and like, yeah, there's a little bit of panic going on in there.
Are pretty clear, you can do all your manholes and that.
It's almost like piracy.
Seeing bigger than us, unfortunately, that's where I start getting into the conspiracy realm of things. And
Well, you know, I was a conspirator for 16 months until they finally all figured out it did get created in a lab.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's call this meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance.
Wait, roll call.
Okay, we can do roll call.
Slow down there.
Go ahead.
All right, we have Patchin,
Here.
Brammerson,
Here.
Hodson.
Here.
Moyer is absent tonight. Mary Scott is absent at the moment. Munson.
Here.
So we can hear him. And Coyle.
Here.
Okay, now.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, proof of posting. A copy of the notice was delivered on 5/27. Fax to Star News, posted at the Black Earth Municipal Building and Black Earth Post Office. Posted on the webpage of Black Earth, www.blackearthwisconsin.com, and faxed for posting to the State Bank of Cross Plains Black Earth branch. All right, any public comment? All right, hearing none. Discussion action on presentation from Ellers on refinancing village debt.
All right, we have Dawn Gunderson online with us today. She is with Ellers. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Shelley.
How are you?
Great, thanks.
Good, thanks for being with us today. How do you want to do this?
Well,
We all have a copy of the presentation Ryan sent over.
okay. Are they able to, and we'll walk through that. I guess the other option too is, are you able to see me on a video screen? I can also share my screen and have it up and walk through the pages there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Let
Okay.
me share this with multiple participants. You have the floor. Share away.
Let me get. All right, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So I appreciate you accommodating us by doing this virtually. Brian will probably be joining as soon as he's wrapped up in the meeting he is attending presently, but I'll walk through the packet of material, and Brian hopefully will be online when we get into some of the details as he put together the document that I'm sharing with you. So I guess I'll talk a little bit big picture, and Brian prepared what I thought was a well done memo to kind of summarize some things. And you know, as we work with you as your municipal advisor, we periodically look at all your outstanding debt. As many of you know, we're in a real low interest rate environment, so there's been opportunity recently to refinance existing debt. So Brian brought forward some opportunity to look at some outstanding bank notes that you have for potential savings. And primarily you have an issue that was done in 2017 with the bank that has a pretty significant balloon at the back end of it. So it made sense to look at that and kind of lock it in at lower interest rates now and take that big balloon out of that future year and restructure that for an opportunity for savings as well as restructuring at lower interest rates. So that's kind of started the process earlier in the year when Brian brought that forward. And in talking to staff, there you also have some need for financing an electric utility project. So this presented the opportunity to kind of combine that new issue financing need with the refunding. So what Brian has put together here is a couple options to do that. And we talk about the different ways that you can issue debt, and you've utilized the bank in the past. You can certainly go to a local bank. There's state programs that are available to you, and there's what you have also done in the past as well is municipal market issues. And in the interest rate environment that we're in right now, the state trust fund loan rates are pretty high. We're not seeing real aggressive bank loan rates. So the municipal market is actually providing the most economical way to issue debt right now. So what Brian has done is he's looked at your financing needs and he's put together a couple different options. Again, I'll talk to him in broad brush discussion now, and we can go into the tables because it's all illustrated there as well. So one of the options is you do everything under what is referred to as a general obligation debt issuance, and that's what your bank notes have been, what a state program is generally a general obligation debt. And what that means is you're pledging an irrepealable tax to pay the debt service. So it provides the cheapest way to borrow money, because to an investor that's loaning it to you and purchasing these bonds, they know they're going to get paid back because you're pledging that you're going to levy a tax on property value to pay them back. So it's the lowest cost of financing. And in this issue, we would have to, in this particular case, look at doing two debt issues. One is a tax exempt and one is taxable, and I'll explain that in a few minutes, a little more detail. But it provides the lowest cost of financing. So our option one is to do everything on a general obligation debt. Our second option is to look at that electric utility project and issue that on a revenue bond basis. So that new money piece would be done on a revenue bond. The bank notes would be refinanced on a GO basis. And that revenue bond, what it does is it uses the revenues from the utility as the security to pay back the debt. So instead of general obligation or your tax base, you're using the revenue from utility. It is a more expensive way to finance projects because it's a less secure debt instrument. So interest rates are a little higher. There's also some additional cost of financing up front. So it costs a little bit more money, but the advantage to that is it shifts things away from your general obligation, which is counted under a debt capacity level. We've probably talked about this in the past. Local governments can issue up to 5% of their tax base they can have outstanding in general obligation debt. So, and every municipality throughout the whole state of Wisconsin has that capacity limit. If you issue on a revenue basis, it doesn't count against that debt capacity. So if you were to choose option two in these scenarios, you could preserve about $1.5 million of your general obligation debt capacity for, if you had other projects coming up in the near term that were not related to your utilities, you would maybe want to preserve that capacity. So option two would be an advantage if that was your focus. The coverage, when we look at the difference between general obligation and revenue bonds, in general obligation, you want to make sure that you have $1 of revenue for every $1 of debt. On a revenue bond basis, you have a coverage requirement that says for every $1 of debt you have to pay, you need to have at least $1.25 of available revenues. And those available revenues are your revenues of your utility, minus in your operating expenses and what's left over to pay debt. So your utility would have to have a stronger revenue base to cover that under an electric revenue bond versus a general obligation. So as Brian has identified in his memo, then when it comes to coverage for that debt for the utility itself, option one or the general obligation would be an advantage. And then his last check mark here is administrative burden. If we move to option two, so it has the advantage of preserving debt capacity, it will take staff a little bit more time to prepare for the sale because we're issuing a different security pledge document to take it out to the market. So option one would be a little less staff time to do that, but I don't think that should be your final determination on what option that you choose. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we want to talk about. And I think the guidance we're looking for this evening is to talk through these options, to get some direction from you on which option makes more sense for your goals. And then the next steps would be coming back with resolutions to approve proceeding with the sale. There would be an offering document or official statement that's prepared, and we take it out to market. We receive competitive bids, and then we come back on a day of sale to award for the lowest cost of financing. And then, a few weeks after that, there's closing, and you have the money available for your new projects and to pay off the outstanding debt. So I'm going to pause for a moment if there's any questions on that big picture, and then we'll kind of walk through the schedule so you can visualize what I've tried to explain here.
So I have a question. Right now, we're meeting our obligations on our electric utility from the general fund at this point because of the loss of revenue due to COVID. And so I believe we're in the red $113,000. More than that? More than that. I was wondering about, catching up and making it flush with this financing. Is that a good idea? Is it an option?
If you were to borrow money for the utility to make up for that deficit, you would have to be looking at a slightly different instrument than what I'm going to talk through now. It becomes a taxable issue, and one of the refundings that we're doing, it's taxable because you were paying back advances to the general fund, and so you cannot do that on a tax exempt basis under the IRS rules. So I mean, it's something that we can explore for you. Now, have you started recovering? So am I understanding correctly that did you have customers that just didn't pay? Or how did?
I think we lost a lot of large users over the course of it being, the schools
Shut down?
and the business, everything that shut down.
Okay.
Created it. It wasn't just one thing in particular. I think our residential even went down, didn't it? So, we're having a real struggle with revenue.
Okay, so has that reversed itself now? Are those businesses back up and operating and utilizing the utility again or the services?
Not the school.
Schools are back in, but now summer.
No, it's summer,
So, Dawn, part of
Yes.
that refinancing, when we did that, the PSC stepped in our annual report or our last rate case and made it very clear that if we were to go out and borrow to pay back the general fund again, that it required their review, but we're also set to go in for a rate case increase the first of the year again. We'll start that process this fall. They extended us a year for that. They gave us 2 years to do that application and gave us a year extension due to COVID. So we have to start that process this fall. So the electric rates are going to be going up, and they will be looking at that loss, I'm sure, through that rate case.
Okay. And I hate to kind of put off and defer this question, but You know, Brian is actually one of our utility experts, and he is quite a bit more, he's in a better position to answer the questions as they relate to rate cases because he actually gets involved and does those. And so not only rate cases, but revenue analysis. And so I'm relying on what he has done for looking at that utility. And my guess is he's gone back and looked at your most recently audited financial statements and has determined that your electric utility is in a pretty good capacity for issuing debt and its ability to cover debt service. So, you know, again, that's based on probably 2019 numbers and not 2020 numbers. So, you know, that he may have a different approach to how to handle that with that amount of change. So did your utility have any reserves that it could help support that loss?
Not electrical, no.
No?
But that doesn't mean that there's not some money, right, that we were getting and got that couldn't go towards that. If
The rescue
the
fund?
rescue refund could go
Yeah.
towards that.
We have, talked about using some of the rescue funds to go towards that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there is some ability to recoup losses in revenues. So I would think that would be a perfect example of lost revenue as a result of COVID. So, you know, that would be certainly something to explore and maybe a more appropriate way to make that up rather than overall rate increases to all the customers. But so, I mean, I'm gonna, you know, hopefully Brian will get on the line and we can bring this forward again. Now he's structured that utility refinancing around what he had determined to be available revenues, and it looked like your utility was in a pretty good financial position, at least through the end of 19. But I think that is something that we can help you explore and what options that you might have available to you for that. So let me get into some of the details here, and we'll talk a little bit about that distinction between tax exempt and taxable, because that is going to drive some of this refunding as well when we went back and looked at those outstanding issues. So I'm going to walk through, and I don't believe there's page numbers on the bottom of the pages, but there are schedules attached with schedule titles on the top of them. So the first thing I want to talk about is, you know, Brian put together your existing outstanding debt. And so this is it's a large pull-out page in your handout. You're certainly not going to be able to read this. I will try to zoom in a little bit because I want to talk about the issues that we're considering here. So when we looked at this, you have a 2017 banknote. And on this, you can see, if you can see this, there's a big, huge principal payment. It's about principal of around $40,000 a year. And then at the back end, you have this $600,000 principal payment. It was $1 million banknote that was issued, and what this issue is there must have been advances that the general fund made to the utilities. You went to the bank, borrowed money, and paid those advances back. So one of the refundings that we're looking at doing is taking out that and restructuring it to get rid of that $600,000 balloon. And you'll see that the interest rates on that were about 2.8%, and we certainly can achieve lower interest rates in the issue market, including any cost of issue. The other, there's another, I think he's got to include this 2017B. I'll see when I get into details. I should probably, before I state that out loud, make sure it is in that. Yeah, I think we're only doing the one with the takeout, because those interest rates aren't as bad on that one. Then there was this 2020 banknote that was for streets and a truck. They're at 2.8%. And then the banknotes for the community park that was in 2019, they're 2.35. Those would be the banknotes that we're looking at refinancing. So this lists all your outstanding debt. The one nice thing, it will consolidate these notes and you'll have one issue to deal with rather than those three separate issues. Now I'm going to get back to my lower screen to make this easier to advance. The other thing that's outstanding, you do have one water revenue bond issue outstanding, and although we're not issuing any new revenue bonds for the water, Brian has got that identified. It was a safe drinking water fund loan, and this is when we talk about the coverage on this schedule. The net revenues from the financial statement show your water utility is in a real good position to cover that outstanding debt. So that would be a similar exercise that we would do with the sewer utility and the electric utility. The existing, this is general obligation debt. This is that debt that's backed by your borrowing capacity under your debt, under your tax base. So we've identified the total principal and interest payments, and that comes from that previous schedule. You have debt issues that have been previously issued for general obligation that are paid by tax increment district number 3, your electric utility, your water utility, and your sewer utility. So it's the electric and the sewer utility that had those big balloon payments in 2027, and that this refinancing will take care of those. So this is prior to doing that refunding. And then your net levy. And we understand that the goal is to keep your levy not going up, but kind of keeping it at the level or going down. So right now, the structure is you've got a pretty decent drop in 2022. It drops again in 2028 and 30, and then completely out of your levy supported debt by 2031. You still have utility debt that goes out longer than that. So what Brian was looking at is your ability to kind of structure this new issue a little bit around that drop off in levy, and to kind of keep your debt levy for the levy supported debt somewhat taking advantage of those drops, I guess is a better way to say that. So that kind of recaps your existing debt. So now I'm going to get into the 2 financing options. And this first one is, as I mentioned, is the general obligation bond financing. And the first page of this is what we call a sizing page. And this is how you can kind of see how I'm referring to the different types of issues. So if we did this as general obligation, we'd be looking at 2 debt issues. One is a tax exempt and one is a taxable. And again, it's the state law and the IRS laws that govern what can be tax exempt and what can be taxable. So under the tax exempt, we would be looking at the refinancing of the 2019, which was the street and the trucks. Oh no, excuse me, 2019 was the parks, 2020 was streets and trucks. And so that 2019 is all paid for by the levy. And the 2020 is also paid for by levy. So those would be 2 refinancings that would impact the levy. And then this electric substation, the $1.5 million, we've included for this illustration or for this option as a general obligation and part of that issue. So we'd be looking at a sizing of about 2.6 million of GO bonds. There is some funds left over for that have already been levied to make payments on the 2020 issue. And we've estimated issuance expenses, and these are estimates. They'll be finalized when we get closer to the sale or actual sale day. But that's our overall sizing broken out by what we're refinancing. The substation is about 1.5 million of that, and then the other levy pieces. Now the taxable, this relates to that 2017 issue, and it was both for electric and sewer. And again, the reason it's taxable is it was advances that the utilities were paying back to the general fund. And because the utilities are basically part of the same entity as the village, you can't do that in tax exempt. So you're basically paying yourself back for something that was in the past. So bond attorneys weighed in on this and said it has to be done as a taxable issue. So if we were to do this general obligation financing option, we'd be looking at 2 issues, a $2.6 million tax exempt issue and an $885,000 taxable issue. So the difference between this and when we get to option 2 is basically the only difference is this substation we'll be moving that out of a GO and putting that into a revenue bond debt issuance. So going back and getting on to the next page, this is just an allocation of how we would restructure this. The refinancing of the 19 notes would be here. You can see we talked about those interest rates being around 2.35 and 2.8. These are the rates we're seeing in the market now. Each maturity has its own interest rates in this type of financing, but we're looking at it ranging from 0.55% in 22 to 1.2% in 28. So this is why this timing is appropriate to undertake these refinancing and even that restructuring and kind of locking into that. So this would be those two bank notes, 19 and 20, and then this would be the substation. So we've kind of got this structured, you know, with a little bit higher principal payments toward the back end, but this would be the electric utility. So I guess the question would be is maybe this needs to be relooked at if there's concern that the utility revenues would be lower in 2020 and then again in 2021, and maybe you know, we can, you know, structure this a little differently, but we'll let Brian weigh in on that. And he's also highlighted, and this was in the memo, because this is the lowest cost of financing, doing this fashion and the overall scheme is about $134,000 less overall cost, doing it as a general obligation debt issue versus a revenue issue. As I mentioned, interest rates are higher on revenue bonds, and there's a little additional cost to do the financing up front. And then on the taxable piece, this is what this is a sewer and the electric revenue pieces of that 2017 issue. And the way Brian's got this structured is, and that was based on the ability of the utilities to make the debt service payments and have coverage, is he refinanced this issue. He took it out a little bit longer. I mean, we had this large balloon payment in 2027. He stretched out longer, but he's actually making a little greater principal payments in the early years. Again, based upon the ability of the utilities to pay. We may rethink that with further discussion on how 2020 may come out for your overall utilities. But this would be the structure for that taxable bond issue. Then overall, since there's some new money related to this, or the refunding and some of the restructuring, what Brian has done here is he's actually done the structuring of the refinancing to kind of change that debt service a little bit, kind of levels it out a little bit. So moving some of the principal into the earlier years provides some additional savings. We have the abatements, which is the offsetting revenue from the utilities reflected in here. So this kind of brings it back all into the tax levy impact from where you were in your base case. One of the other points that I mentioned was the borrowing capacity, how much general obligation debt you can have outstanding. State law says 5% of your equalized value. What this schedule reflects is a projection of your equalized tax base, that 5% of your debt. This has your existing debt after the refundings have been taken out, adding those two issues in. So doing this on a general and borrowing for that substation on a general obligation, you'll bump up to about 75% of your borrowing capacity. We wouldn't want to see you go any higher than that. We're not too concerned about it because you come off of that fairly quickly and you drop back down to a more reasonable outstanding debt capacity. I guess the key here would be is if you had any major projects that are in the near horizon that you need to preserve that for, then maybe this would not be the appropriate option for you, is doing this on a GO, lowest cost of financing, but this may be a driving factor that would steer you more to the revenue bond issue. And, you know, all in all, what the tax exempt or the overall savings, this is both the taxable and the tax exempt. So while we're restructuring this, Brian moved some of the cost in the earlier years of that takeout. So I'm going to jump back over. If you look on the far left side of this schedule, that 2017 debt issue and 27 had that big balloon. We're taking the other two issues. When we refinance and restructure it, we've taken that taxable issue out additional 2 years. So there's some costs in the early years, savings in the later years, but again, those are driven more to the utility. And the overall, while it's not significant, there's about a $49,000, just about $50,000 savings, future savings, because there's actually more savings than there are in cost in this. And that's offsetting it by some administrative expenses that would be included to do disclosure reporting and paying agent services. So there is some future savings overall by doing the refinancing and the restructuring. I think the big key in this is that restructuring piece. Again, it's wrapped around the ability of the utilities to pay. The last schedule, and it's another larger pullout schedule in your packet of material. Under this analysis, it's the table 10. What Brian has done here is he's taken all of your utilities and say, what's their ability to pay their debt? Again, this would have been based on the most recent audited financial statements. So your water revenue bonds, you're at $1.59 of available revenues for every dollar of debt service. So you still have capacity under a revenue bond basis for your water utility. We also look at all-in coverage, since some of your general obligation is also being supported by the water utility. And here we want to make sure that you've got at least a one-time coverage on all the GO debt, which you do. So the revenue debt is satisfactorily covered in there. You have all-in coverage that's adequate in the water utility. In the sewer utility, with the restructuring, the same thing. This is based on 19, adequate coverage to do all this, and this is all GO-related debt. Your TIG 3 is in a good position to pay for its debt as well. And in the electric utility, and this is based upon, again, 19, with this restructure, you do have adequate net revenues to make the payments. So that's, I guess, what prompted my question to say, have you come back around from that lost revenue, or are you still experiencing that? So I don't know, Shelley, if you and Brian have had conversations. When do you expect to have your 2020 audit complete?
He told me he was wrapping that up today, and I should see a copy of that probably within the next week.
Okay, well, as soon as you get that, because that will tell us exactly where that utility ended up at the end of the year, get that over to Brian so he can update this model with those new numbers. And then I think he may need to have some further detail about what you've seen so far in your revenues for the utility since January of 2021, and how your billings look for that now in comparative to what they were pre-COVID. And then I guess then further to evaluate the need, if the need arises or is appropriate, to issue debt to replace those revenues, or utilize some of the federal programs that or federal funds that may be available to do that. I'm thinking that may be more appropriate than to actually go out and issue debt for that. But I think that that's a conversation that Brian can help weigh in on. So I guess the bottom line, okay, go ahead.
Our annual report is on file with the PSC.
Okay, so you're
file. The electric is done and submitted. So.
Okay. So Brian can go and pull that as well. So I'll when he comes on the line, I don't think he's on yet unless you've seen him come on.
Yeah, I just joined on.
Brian. Hey, Brian, welcome.
Hey.
So we've just kind of wrapped up walking through the schedules on the GO. And just to kind of bring you up to speed, what the village has shared with me is their electric utility suffered some significant revenue losses as a result of
Okay.
COVID. For a couple of reasons, the schools were not being in operation, and several businesses had temporarily closed. So they're actually looking at a deficit right now in their electric utility. So their 2020 PSC report has been filed. I don't know if you've had a chance to even look at that. And their audit should be done probably within the next few days and maybe available next week.
Mhm.
So the question was raised is, in this financing, can they look at replenishing that deficit with a, with some sort of debt issue, and or with some of these federal programs and the federal relief funds. I know some of that have been kind of targeted for lost revenues, and I'm thinking maybe that's a more appropriate way to make up for any losses that they may have had there. But you may want to relook your coverage test for the electric utility based on the 2020 numbers. Does that make sense?
Sure, and I'll take a look at the audit preferably, actually, because I have the 2020 PSC report, and you guys are showing $100,000 more of operating income. So it shows better, but that's because of lower O&M expenses. So I think maybe we'll look at the audit to kind of better gauge that. But you did have a drop, it looks like, of about 80,000 in sales of electricity, but you had a drop of about 210,000 to 220,000 in O&M expenses. So I think I'll take a look at the audit when we get it, Shelley, and I can certainly rerun this and make sure that we have adequate debt service.
Okay, so I will go ahead then, Brian, unless you want to take over with revenue financing. Up to you.
No, I think, to be quite honest, most of the option 2 will look pretty similar to option 1, in that the only differences being the revenue port, we're switching that electric part of, the tax exempt issue over to revenue bonds with a third issue that adds costs of issuance that are shown. You're going to have higher interest rates, as Dawn indicated, when you net that against option 1. So option 1 is going to look prettier in terms of total principal and interest payments, but you're avoiding putting the burden on your general obligation debt capacity. So I think, if you have a future kind of capital improvement plan that you feel you'd be utilizing debt financing for in the next 2 years, bring that up, and we can certainly kind of provide maybe a better roadmap for the next couple of years. But that said, I think option 1, all other things being equal, remains the better option as it's cheaper. And you still have a residual capacity for general obligation debt of, plus 1.6 million. So that said, that's the option, that more or less, like I said, all other things being equal, I'd recommend. Certainly we can relook at the net revenues for the electric utility. I'm not seeing that it went down, but like I said, I think the audit will prove that sometimes better than the Public Service Commission report, only because I know the auditors have a deadline when it comes to the PSC, and they don't really have as stringent of a deadline for the audit. So typically you see the PSC numbers not have the full picture. But that said, we can take a look at the audit and update the numbers and update kind of the debt structure to mimic that. But I don't, beyond that, we don't need to go page by page on the option 2. I think it kind of stands intuitive that you're going to have more expenses with an additional debt issuance. So be more or less, do you want to avoid the geo debt capacity?
Yeah, so the only 2 different schedules probably in this one would be, one is this sizing sheet. So here we have the 3 separate options that Brian just related to, and then the savings analysis where we were showing the difference between the existing debt and the refunded debt would be less because of the additional cost to do that revenue bond issue.
So I have a question for you. If we do this as a GL versus a revenue bond, how do our rural electrical customers share in the debt expense? Because we can't tax them under our GL, only our village residents.
Correct. So although you're pledging on a GO basis, you're abating the levy. You would be paying for it through the revenues of the electric system and not the levy. So you'd not claim that on your levy limit worksheet. You'd only claim the amount that the levy is responsible for. So I believe I shared a much more detailed report with you initially, Shelley, that kind of depicted the GO debt and then the various repayment sources, levy, water, sewer, electric. So there are some outstanding general obligation debt pieces that the utilities pay for. So it can, abate that levy. And so anybody who's part of the electric system is responsible for paying that through their electric bill.
Does that answer your question?
I think so, but does that mean there's an increase for them?
Right now, we're showing that the rates are adequate to pay for it, but that's based off of the financials up to 2019. We can add in 2020, and then it would still, if the operating income is the same or higher, then they have a little bit more capacity. But that said, if you believe that the recent O&M for some reason has been low or high, that would be important information to have. Utilities do kind of have volatile operating and maintenance expenses, specifically when you look at the maintenance side of it. You can't predict a main break on the water side, or you can't predict, outages or anything that may happen on the electrical side. But in addition to that, do you have any capital needs that, in the future that should be contemplated as well? You just kind of told me about this substation. Do we have any other, water or sewer main projects or any other kind of capital needs upcoming that we want to, contemplate and put into this to kind of see what the rate adjustments may need to be? But that said, kind of standing where we are today, the electric rates would be able to pay for it.
Brian, Shelley did mention, and maybe you already knew that they're going in for a rate case for the electric utility, beginning on that later this year.
Okay. All the better for the operating revenues, and the PSC will benchmark you to their rate of return. So you'll be in an even better financial position to be able to pay for operating expenses and your debt service.
I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing unless there was a schedule anybody wanted to look at.
I think everybody's good.
And the key now is to get the right numbers in to see exactly where it's at.
So what do you need from us, Don and Brian?
I would say the 2020 audit, kind of once that's ready. I believe to the last time we spoke, Shelley, we weren't totally sure about undertaking this substation project, or I guess where's the conversation with that?
Not approved.
Right.
Just looking at it, right?
So.
It's on the railroad tracks.
Train has left the station. Okay, that's good to know. The only other thing would just be kind of making sure you guys understand the timing. You know, if you're looking to execute a financing like this. So more or less, you want to leave yourself at minimum kind of 60 days to understand kind of green light to Ellers to getting funds, but that's more realistic to be about 90 days. And the reason for that is that you do have to pass an initial resolution. So we'll be at kind of your next meeting for a set sale. And then in addition to that, then you actually award the sale on the sale day, which would be, you know, the meeting after that. So, you know, about 30 days or 31 days, whatever it ends up being. So the next month we'd be at that meeting as well to award the sale based on the interest rates that we get. And then you give yourselves about 21 days for the closing to happen. So that's when monies would be received. So I think the only question that I would have for the village is, does that sound in line in terms of, let's say we do decide to go forward with the substation in terms of getting money to actually pay for that? Or would you be worried that you need to rely on reserves in the interim, and kind of let's have a discussion about the timing of getting the new money project done? So that would put us at like the end of August for funds received.
I mean, once we see the numbers, we can decide that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then get the correct numbers is the next step, so.
All right, so we'll get you some new numbers as fast as I can get them. And, kind of go from there, right?
Right, and we can even, you know, kind of plan for at the next meeting, having that initial resolution. If it's something that we feel, you know, you can't take on, you're certainly engaged to kind of do this rate adjustment as well. So it also stands to reason that you'd be in a better position to pay for it, even if the, you know, the 2020 numbers weren't as pretty, but I am seeing an opposite picture. But that said, you know, I think it might be a good idea to kind of be ready to at least do the initial set sale. And the only reason for that is you're mitigating your interest rate risk the sooner you do this. And if the interest rates go up, obviously we have less of ability to do some of the refunding, whereas the 2017, I would probably recommend doing sooner rather than later, that refunding, to get rid of that balloon payment at a lower interest rate as soon as you can. Because just based on the market that we're in, kind of historic lows, you'd hate to see you lose out, just kind of playing the waiting game on that issue specifically. So I will say, once I get numbers from you, Shelley, I'd plan to send you this back, and you know, we can talk about this and then talk about putting it on, you know, the next meeting to kind of walk through, you know, the potential initial resolutions too. I just think it's a good idea to get that train out of the station as well, just given the interest rate market that we're in.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dawn, for covering early. Look at that. You get two of us in one night. Like you always wanted, I'm sure.
She's retiring on us. We're gonna end up losing
Yeah.
her at some point, so.
Yeah, well, I'm leaving you in good hands.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good so far.
Well, that'll continue, I promise you.
It's a small sample size. So, alrighty, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great night.
Yep.
Good night.
So there's no action on this item.
So,
No.
I have a question
Yeah.
before we go on, is how come we're still looking at 735 for community park as borrowing?
Yes, correct.
That is the total of what we had before they had applied our first principal payment. So we just made a bunch of debt, which I talk about in our financials. He'll have to rerun these numbers with all those debt payments made now.
But why isn't the grant money out of here, the park money out of here?
Yeah, he
Why are we looking to borrow the money that we don't
Right,
need to have?
he needs to know that that has all been applied at this point. And
So do we know how much was applied off that?
He just used what we originally borrowed for this, presentation day.
Okay.
So it'd be considerably lower.
So it should be a lot,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, should be the way it sounds.
You know, the kind of the scary thing was the electric having to pay everybody else back and using that money, now it's gone, right? We should've just forgave the loan, we would've been further off ahead today. and
Yep.
not spent it. I mean, it's just, and now we're paying taxes on something we already had debt for. Just doesn't make sense, so. Before our time, so. Most of us. Sorry, Jane.
Well, I think the two things that I'm concerned with are, you know, number one, in building the substation, we all know where supply chains have become quite an issue, and as we're seeing with the things that you're turning in, you know, costs are rising.
Yep.
And I think the expediency of getting it refinanced is probably number one.
Interest is gonna go.
Because it is gonna pop,
Yep.
so the faster we can get to, even if we have to call a special meeting to do it, that would be my two concerns, just,
Oh, we gotta have true numbers, so.
yep.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what you're saying, I'm a little concerned that, like, if we go one route, we'll need to use our revenue to pay for it, right? So then we're losing our revenue there for anything else at that point.
Well,
And if we go the other route,
you're still using your revenues to pay it back to the general fund. It's
right,
not free to the general fund, they still have to pay it back.
right,
So it's, either way, it's the same thing.
okay. And I guess the other side of that would be, if we don't use our revenue, then we have to use our taxes, right? And then it's the few paying for the many at that point?
That's right, and the benefit is, like I said, because we're going in for a rate case with the PSC, if we have this done before that happens, they bring all of that into the next rate. So,
Okay.
yes, the rates are gonna increase, but it'll be, what they deem
Right.
necessary to pay that.
And has everybody looked at that comparison for rates? I mean, electrically, we're probably the cheapest around.
Oh, in that sense.
Not
yeah,
water
yeah.
and sewer, so overall, we, it doesn't,
Right.
but electrically, and I heard Alliant, Sean. maybe-
He's in a Maisel meeting right now.
Yeah, maybe it's got their meeting right now.
Oh, Alliant and them are going for like a 15%
Oh,
increase.
wow.
Yeah, they
It's huge.
supply our power,
Huh?
they supply our power, so we're gonna see it too.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, they're doing it on the PSC side. for
I know,
rate
but
base
it's still
and-
gonna
right.
Yeah,
affect us.
so we're gonna see some.
It's gonna happen one way or another. It's
Gonna happen one way or the other,
How much,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions, discussion? Okay, next, item B is discussion action of Friends of Library using village parking lot for pie auction, July 27, 21.
Yeah. So Bailey, do you have any more information other than, I think I got an email from Pat Milmark. The chamber won't let the pie auction happen in the park at the same time as concerts as normal. So they're looking, I think, for another location and inquired about using the village parking lot that day. The only concern I had on it, otherwise I think it's fine, is obviously the parking for the concerts. That's the last concert series. We know how many people show up for that.
In the parking lot.
Will there be any issue? I don't know what they need for space.
Do you know what they need, or?
I haven't heard from them what their needs are for that. I've also heard, from them that they would be open to doing like the grassy area, as well.
Sidewalk?
I think they've
Yeah.
used it before.
Sidewalk?
Haven't they done, I think they've done it before during the
Oh.
concerts.
What about that, the vacant lot?
Tennis court,
Huh?
tennis court, you could close that down for the night.
Oh,
But
Yeah, the
they-
tennis court's not a
Tennis
bad
court would be
idea.
a good idea.
And it's,
That'd probably be better than anything.
you just have to note it that it's closed.
Well, we
for-
also have an easement that comes in, where Peterson and, between Peterson and us,
Yeah.
there's that, so if we decided to maybe shut down Park Street that way for concerts, they could set up at the end of that.
I would have something without affecting parking.
Yeah.
Right, and so, yeah, I mean, that's an option too that I don't think,
I like the tennis court, because everybody can see them from the park.
yeah, they can see them right from that driveway too, canopy
Oh, that's
set up,
true, right?
right
I thought
across.
even right here, where the police parking is, and not affecting the parking of people.
Right, I just thought, all the people going back and forth, if we could get it on that side,
You got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
from a
I wouldn't
safety
take the
standpoint,
sidewalk out here.
Mhm.
The sidewalk out in front of the municipal building even, so.
Yeah.
that could happen.
Yeah,
So I
that
think
was,
there's all kinds of options, it's just.
yeah, that was my concern too, was taking up parking for that concert. So, if we can find another option that works for them, that's great. I haven't talked to them a whole lot about it, other than like letting them know I'm like here to help if they need it. But I think they've been pretty much handling it on their own.
So I think we just need to bring them in and just discuss, here's some options, what's gonna work best for you.
Yep,
Right, yep.
and I'm good with whatever works.
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
everybody is, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
That makes it pretty easy.
all right, so we're good on any action. Okay, discussion action on letter supporting trail system connecting Dane and Sauk County.
Yeah. Peter's here, you know, y'all should have the copy of that letter in there, and I don't know if you would like to kind of introduce this to everyone?
Sure.
Brought it in,
Yep.
and
I think I'll move up so that.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
So that Tyler can hear me too.
Yep.
Sorry if my back is to some of you guys when I get up here.
That's all right.
Yeah, I thought, and thanks for giving me that time. The letter that you have that you're gonna be discussing in just a minute, thought I'd give you some background leading up to the letter to give you some perspective as to why we're asking that you authorize having Shelley and Mitch sign it on behalf of the village. It's a joint letter from the three villages, Cross Plains, Mazo, and Black Earth. Shelley's got the original, you have the original, Shelley, that I've been playing Pony Express. And so, Cross Plains dealt with this last Monday, Mazo the next night, and then I brought the letter over to Shelley. So it's already been signed by their officials, which kind of says to you, what are we really deciding? But I think, be that as it may, somebody had to be last, and we saved the best for last. Good news is there's no money involved in this, okay? So you don't have to worry about revenue bonds or general obligations or whatever. There is, of course, funding from the county. That's what the letter is about. The other good news, so there is really no bad news here tonight. The other good news is that one of the great things that actually occurred because of the pandemic is people got out and used some of the outdoor activities. So interest in the trail has grown exponentially. Momentum is there. It's not gonna happen tomorrow. In our lifetimes, yes, but somewhere in between there, this will all happen. But 3 years ago, almost to the day, Dane County and Sauk County entered into a very unique partnership to share the cost and funding of replacing the old railroad bridge at Sauk, just before it crumbled into the river, with a multi-use, pedestrian bridge. So in the intervening years, the counties have already paid for a feasibility study, an engineering study to get some ideas to cost and design. They just did a borings test this spring to make sure that the new abutments would hold in the substrate below the river. So all is good to this point. There's still a number of steps to take place, and every time a budget is put together at the county level, they've got to stick some money in there for eventualities that could come up during the time that the budget is in place, and then any money that's left over just gets moved ahead. So they have not budgeted the total cost, and as I was sitting waiting for the discussion, I thought, I bet you somebody's gonna ask what they think this is all gonna cost, meaning the bridge. And don't quote me on this, but my memory, if I'm thinking about this correctly, is a little over $8 million. But there's already some costs involved ahead of that, and there will be some costs for site preparation coming up, that kind of thing. So that's really what the letter is about, is to the county executive saying, we believe this project has worth, we want it to continue to be funded. Just because people are talking about the bridge doesn't mean that the rest of the county supervisors are all on board about spending money on this project. So at our last several Gateway to the Driftless board meetings, we've been doing them by Zoom also,
The Dane County Parks Commission Chair, Dave Ripp, has been attending, and Chris James, who is kind of in this part of the county, is from Dane County Parks, has been working heavily on the project of getting the trail built and the construction of the bridge. They've both been attending. And it does so happen that at the end of this month, the current, I'm gonna say the head of Dane County Parks, I'm not sure what his title is, but he's retiring. So there will be a new person on board. So both Dave and Chris are saying it would be great for that new person to see that there is support at the local level, that this isn't just a Madison idea being put in place, you know, in the northwestern part of the county. So we generated this letter to be a joint letter from the three. By the way, that both of them said that it needs to come from the local officials. You know, it'd be great to have some people, some business people, but they're gonna really respond to the local officials, because government to government. So that's really the background to the letter. The request to do it is because this is moving forward. I mean, if you've driven from here over to Cross Plains on KP, that new subdivision, right parallel with the road, a lot of that gravel that they're putting in, that's part of the trail to come out from Cross Plains. There's discussions with the Stotts Farm, further to the east or west of there, right along, it'd be along Highway 14, but they've already created an easement for fishermen, and they're talking to Groundswell Conservancy about an easement for the trail. Where it would be on their fields, you know, who knows, but this is all part of the process of a whole bunch of puzzle pieces getting stuck together. But they've already named, meaning when I say they, the county, the Dane County, which is in charge of construction, development, and so forth, and even buying land if warranted for the trail. They've already named it the Black Earth Creek Trail from west side of Middleton to Mazomanie, connecting with Wolf Run Trail. They're already very, very close with the railroad to turning that into a rails to trails conversion from Mazo up to the river. They've already named that the Walking Iron Trail segment. So there's a bunch of trail segments in Dane County, a bunch of trail segments in Sauk County, but the bridge is the real linchpin, okay? The whole thing eventually actually they've named it to be the gateway to the driftless trails system, which is a nice serendipity for our organization to have the names there, but that's to encompass the Ice Age Trail, this trail, the lower Wisconsin River trails, all of that stuff within this whole realm. But it has a lot of economic development opportunities, you know, not just for the village of Black Earth, but the whole region. So the funding is necessary, going to be required at some point, and all along the way. And we just saw this as being the way to keep the momentum and the energy up, so to speak. So if you've got some questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But I'm hoping that you'll authorize signature. And Shelley, if you want, I could take it tonight, or I can come tomorrow morning and pick it up. Either way, but it's dated today, June 1st, in anticipation of this meeting being the last one to have it signed. And then our board chair, Chris Long, will sign it and hand deliver it to Parisi's office tomorrow. There are already letters going from the town of Mazomanie, the town of Vermont. My truck, and Karen Karlik, of course, is our town chair out in the town of Vermont, and she owns the museum. So I asked her, would you mind sending one from the Black Earth Children's Museum? She said, sure. So there will be, and there should be some others still coming, but those are the ones that I'm aware of. So if you've got some questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I just thank you for the time and your efforts in keeping this moving.
Well, I'd go ahead and make a motion that we sign the letter, get on board. It's not costing us anything. And it's, like he said, government to government, and they take a good look at it. And let's hold hands and see if we can get there.
Yeah. Second. Okay, second. Scott? Jerry? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thanks, that train has left the station too. Would you like me to, take it tonight or just pick it up
Take it
tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
I should really want to drive back, yeah.
Well, tomorrow morning.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
For everything, you're welcome.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Tomorrow, no math.
Yeah. All right, discussion action on Cleary Street final payment request. Nick?
Yeah, so the final pay request, sent out last week, did it get part of the packages?
Yep, it should have been in everyone's packet, like,
Yeah, I saw
maybe,
it.
yeah.
So, this is, pay request number 3 and also the final one. So, kinda looks like this, just for example, a cover page.
There's a lot of papers. So, everybody, it's probably right, looks like this. Just maybe in the middle, like, a little after your agenda.
Is everything good?
I don't have any issues, I don't know if you have anything else to talk about.
No.
Came in about 11,000 under project estimation.
Yeah, overall, it was 11,000 underneath the project contract price, actually, and those saved costs were mainly for, we always put some prices for, soils. When you pull out a piece of pipe and put a piece of pipe in, if you have bad soils, they have to haul that away and bring in new soils. The soils out there were in good enough condition to be left. So that's where a majority of that savings has come into play. And also, there was no unforeseen conditions that arise in change orders. So overall, this is the final one. Matt and I completed a final punch list walkthrough, sent that over to the contractor. They completed everything by, middle of May for final paving, and also any outstanding items that need to be addressed from last year to this year, which included a little bit of concrete work, a little bit of grass restoration. They completed all that. Overall, the big push, for this now, after, once approval for tonight, is getting it for LRIP, which is the Local Road Improvement Program. There's some outstanding funds, from using 2 different past years being approved, a combination of about $50,000 around there, that the village should see reimbursement for. The biggest is 23,000 of that 50 needs to be approved and signed off of by the end of June here. So, right away, with approval, be recommended send a check as fast as possible.
Check has to be signed by June 30th.
Yep, signed in cash by
Yep,
June
cash.
30th. So that's the most crucial part, just so the
So
village
you're
is
happy with
aware.
everything?
Yes.
You both are
We
happy with
Like I said,
it?
went through the punch list,
Yep.
everything's good. Obviously, there's a warranty with the project if anything does arise.
Okay.
But, yeah, we were good with it.
So overall,
Did you need to see some numbers? I wasn't.
No. No.
Yeah, Mike too.
overall, the final pay request,
I think I saw it earlier, it's, I read it at home. Sure.
32,491, 747.
yep, cents.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and do the final pay request for $32,491.47.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right. Discussion action on memorandum to understand groundswell on 1.3 acres of Cooper property located at 613 Center Street.
So what this is the Groundswell Conservancy has a verbal acceptance from Dave Cooper to purchase the property, over on Center Street there. the groundswell would like to donate the property to the village for conservancy. I think their hope, with that conservancy is that it's a low-impact outdoor recreation access to the creek. So for fishing or kayaking. They have presented this agreement, of course, to the village, with the understanding that if the village chooses to accept this, I mean, the groundswell is purchasing this through the stewardship grant, that we wrote collaboratively together. They have done, the site surveying, title commitment, and I believe they would also be doing a, site assessment before anything would be signed over to us. But if we do accept it, the village will be responsible for removing the buildings from the property and preparing the property for use as a public park and creek access. So that is what is in front of you, the decision of whether to accept it or not. So although we have a verbal agreement, nothing is finalized yet with the property owner, just to bring it to attention.
Is there anything with the site assessment that could change the outcome?
I don't know. I guess it depends on if there's asbestos in it. Do we want to accept that and do remediation to turn it into conservancy?
Regardless of what happens, there has to be an abatement done on the
Right.
buildings anyways, before it burns, before you tear it down, before.
Yeah. So outside of that though, is there something that could, happen that the handoff, the donation is gonna be able to be accepted or something to that effect?
No, we should be able to. We
Okay.
accepted Premier donated the building to us a number of years ago, and that was fine.
Okay.
To
So outside that.
I can think of.
just, Jared, getting your thought on things that could arise, does the village have any record of that property using fuel oil for heating, or has it always been natural gas since it's been developed?
There might have been fuel oil in basements years ago, but can't say for sure. Been natural gas for a long time.
Yeah, I guess I would just want to see when the building was built and when the natural gas line went in, just to see if there's any concern of, I mean, a fuel oil tank for residential, if there is a problem, is usually not that big of a problem, but it's just something that you would want to plan on a potential contingency if there was a small cleanup that was involved in that.
We just don't super fun cleanup.
Well, it wasn't dirt floor, or cement floor, so
And I think the phase one site assessment
we'll determine that. Right.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the village. We hate to see it slip away, so
Yeah.
it's my personal opinion.
Is this property currently vacant then? Is it one of the properties that was damaged in the flood and is not habitable?
Correct.
Correct.
And they will do the phase one,
Mm-hmm.
so.
So really, there's no obligation or risk to us at the moment.
No, right, no. Mm-mm.
This is similar to the last motion.
They've done an appraisal of the fair market value, which is how they got to an offer. Obtaining legal description of the property, they're commissioning a phase one environmental hazard assessment, ordering title commitment, and obtaining a purchase agreement with the landowner. That is what it's doing. And using funds from the Knoll Stewardship Grant.
So the phase one is being done. They're doing that. Was Cooper the property owner the entire time then?
Yeah, he still is the property owner, mm-hmm.
If he's the original property owner, then that phase one would include an interview with him, and then we would get a clear understanding of the history of the property. A phase one is always best when there's only been a single property owner.
Is there anything actionable that they need from us?
We need to
We need to actually sign them.
accept this.
Okay.
if we're willing to do it.
And they're going to attempt to acquire the property on behalf of the village. I don't see any bear traps.
So is that
Don't-
what you gotta worry about?
The village is
Generally,
owned up-
that's the purpose of a trap.
True. No doubt.
Obviously, we'll have site cleanup at some point, and then deciding how to,
But that's all part of this. I mean, as far as the assessment for hazards and,
Right,
not the
right.
cleanup of the building, but,
well, the village will have the responsibility
Yeah.
if we take on this, to take care of
Correct.
the buildings, and, yeah. There'll be costs associated with them, so.
And that can be done, it can be done fairly piecemeal too, as we go. It's not one of those things that has to be bang.
all right, so we wanna make a motion then?
Well, I move that we would, sign the memorandum of agreement between the Village of Black Earth and the Ground Soil Conservancy to continue the, phase one.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. He was just, you weren't opposed, you just were delayed?
No, I'm,
Are
I'm,
you- I thought
Okay.
that was.
no, I'm okay.
Just a little delay. All
My
right.
kids must be doing some special gaming right now upstairs.
Get that.
All right, discussion action on pole wrapping community park shelter.
So this comes from, this was discussed at the park committee level. Tyler, sorry I didn't get any information over to you. So we talked about it, no, fine. Parks Committee level, there was interest in wrapping the 5 wooden posts at the new shelter, new concession stand, you call it, out in Community Park. And then also I got bids for doing the remaining poles and some other work out at the Bugs Lee Memorial Shelter. And so that total comes to the $53.50. But if we wait to approve it after June 15th, prices are gonna go up once again due to metal costs. Parks Committee did agree that this would be a good thing to do, so they were looking for the village board's approval to go ahead and spend the money.
Budgeted, right?
Yes, we do have,
We have the money.
yep.
Yeah, we, talked about taking it out of the Parks Equipment Fund.
Okay. So Parks Committee was all right with it?
Yep.
I'll make a motion, we go ahead and let Parks spend the money.
Okay.
Second.
The $53.50.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
And James, you wanted me to try to do it before,
Yeah, no, it's
14.
opposed, but I think the whole Parks Committee's assumption was that it would probably be done before the planning of her grand opening, and that was never discussed, so.
Okay.
That's a good.
I mean, if it's not gonna be
That kinda
done
came
before
up-
then.
That kinda came up at the meeting.
Yep.
Try to get it done before the.
Yep.
So then why,
I'll make
did you
that,
ask him then, or?
no, I'll make that comment to him and see if that's something they can work
So
out.
we don't really know yet if it will be
If
done.
they can,
Yep, if it's possible, yep.
they're gonna wanna do it fast anyways for price costs.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Discussion actions on license applications.
Yep, that time of the year where we have all of our applicants that have submitted their, request for renewal. As, some of you may know, alcohol licenses, are July 1st to June 30th every year. We have Class B retailers, and those are our bars and restaurants, so the Shack, Black Earth Lanes, and Yapper Backer for renewal. Of course, Class A are our stores for selling, it's P&G Gas and Quick Trip. And of course, we have their cigarette and tobacco licenses as well for P&G and Quick Trip.
I see the stores, are they the only ones that require fees, the bars don't?
No, they do. The bars have a $600 fee.
Well, some of them, you have a fee on a couple of them, but there's no fees on all the other ones.
Yes, and they have not paid their fees yet. So they are sent a cover letter when they get these applications names, and they know that they're supposed to submit their checks with it. So we did have a couple that did not. So if you decide to approve them, I would make it, of course, contingent upon their payment being due.
And if it's not paid by such and such a time, a penalty?
Well, June
Well,
30th,
they lose
their
their
current
license as of
license.
July
Oh, they lose the license, okay,
So,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the liquor license depending on their payment.
Second.
I can include this for the background.
I was gonna say, are you?
That was just liquor, or do you want both, liquor and?
Well, that's what
Might
I'm
as well.
asking, do you want all, are you motioning to approve all three licenses?
All,
Cigarette, Class B and Class A? Or are you just,
yes,
okay.
upon payment.
Scott seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Discussion action on Pearl Ditch language cleanup.
Who wants to take that?
What do we have to have the lawyer rewrite it? What is the deal? Do we just have to have the lawyer redo it? Or, I mean, what's it gonna cost us?
I don't know.
So, everyone should have a handout,
Yep.
given that, we're just gonna see this map that was just printed out and given to them recently. So this shows the Coyle easement ditch, which this easement document, occurred and was put on public records in the early 2000 timeframe, I believe. I don't have it right in front of me, but as you can see in the map, it shows a blue dash line, which was what was put on public records that actually says the existing easement. And then there's a red solid line that says new easement. So the one that was put on public records is the existing easement, blue dash line. And after verbally talking with the Perrells, and Matt and myself, our office was present, we didn't go through the whole legal description portion, but everyone was on the same page that the red lines is actually the ditches that need to be cleaned, because those are ditches that are being affected from the village.
Collecting the stormwater.
There's two stormwater crossings at those particular ditches, where the further south one, the existing easement, there's no current culvert pipe crossing 78, so there's no stormwater, rainwater, you could say, from the village going into that ditch. So it's purely from a farm ditch perspective. So back in the day when this easement document was put on public records and created, it had the two southerly ditches where everyone's on the same mindset, plus it makes the most logical sense. It should be the two northern ditches, because those actually receive that stormwater. It's recommended that to clean this up properly so everyone's on the same page when it comes up again 20 years down the road, that, it's proper documented on public records indicating which ditches the village needs to be cleaning, just so it doesn't be forgotten. Perrell may, move away and someone else may buy the farm.
And they're gonna say clean all three,
Right.
because you were cleaning those and you're running off into this.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's absolutely
It's good to
correct.
get done.
Yeah.
So there would be attorney costs involved. I'm unaware of what those attorney costs
Yeah.
would accumulate to, but the attorney would have to, I don't know if it's amend the existing document on public record, the correct terminology for it, but they would have to work with the title company or the clerk, county clerk, to the appropriate document on public records and revise.
Yeah. is there any way we can do this year and budget for the attorney fees and straightening out the mess down the road? Can we get handshakes and do this?
Well, that's already
I think
there.
we already,
That's all clear then?
We've done the
Everybody's
verbal.
kinda happy with the direction that it's,
It's,
Yeah. it's just that down the road, we need to be ready in case ownership changes, things like that.
yeah. So,
Protects us.
you know, and I don't know for the budgeting, when these ditches were going to be completed, if it was gonna be a next year thing with budget
We do have
perspective.
some funds that will be
Yeah,
remaining,
planned
and it wasn't gonna be till fall anyways, you know,
Okay,
obviously
with
once
farming.
crops are off and such. And then I get time through the winter for everything
Well,
to
there's a
just.
public works problem, that attorney fee should come out of there too. Sorry, Dan.
I can find out from Bill what he thinks it might.
Yeah, would you?
be.
I think that would help.
Sure, yep,
I mean, either way, we have to have it done, so it's
right.
not pointless, but yeah, we should.
It needs to be done, but
I mean, what do we have for legal remaining? Shelley, do you know what we have for legal?
not enough.
Two,
Because we were.
Just like
we're
we were-
gonna do
Yeah,
school,
yeah,
so-
yeah.
isn't it?
I forgot.
Yeah,
Well, we're about the same
you,
one.
you save a little bit more though, right there,
Yeah.
trying to clean that stretch, so.
You get one,
Let's find out attorney costs and then we'll bring it back at the next meeting and see
Sure.
what we wanna do.
There's a little bit of legal description that we can help with, probably save you guys some costs.
Do you file with the clerk?
No, that's about, I meant just getting, legal description.
Yeah, the attorney's gonna ask for that.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll
Correspondence.
go ahead and postpone that till the next meeting.
Is there a motion to do that?
I'll make the motion, we postpone it till the next meeting.
just the part with the legal description and the attorneys and all that,
Price, get it,
Pricing.
price, yeah.
yeah.
Got a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, discussion action on crack, huh?
Who is second? Brammerson.
Sure. All right, discussion action on crack filling Village Streets 2021.
Got prices for crack filling from Crack Filling Service in Cross Plains, kind of who we've always used. They're just definitely better than some of the other ones that are out there. We did it as a per pound price, that way nobody's obligated to say said street was done or was not done, it's just whatever product we got is gonna get used. Concentrating the village office parking lot would be here. Red Hawk on the map you can see provided, that highlighter did not show up, my apologies. So we'll be looking at doing more areas south of KP, Red Hawk, and then doing like Hubble and Remington areas. And actually a couple cracks on Center Street, down near 14, down railroad tracks on that new street are already starting to show up, so we wanna make sure we're on the ball for getting those taken care of. Public Works was okay with, Public Works Committee was okay with the $20,000 quote. So just come into village board to seek approval as well.
Already budgeted, right?
Yep,
Shelley, how much before you need, more than one?
25,000.
25,000 is what they want.
Nick, have you guys worked with other crack filling
I mean,
contractors?
how hard, is it hard to call two other places and just get a quote, or?
When you're talking about the types of materials used to.
Yeah.
It-
I mean, I don't know. Just because we use the same guy over and over.
There's definitely other crack fillers out there.
The stuff the
I
county
would-
uses.
I would caution using other ones. I mean, they might be cheaper, but you gotta look at the quality of the product you're getting.
Sometimes they pull right over the plow truck.
Exactly, yeah, you hit them with the plow truck and then it's just dragging it down the road until it ends up in somebody's yard.
So these are the only people we've ever used? Or the only people
To
you know?
my knowledge,
We
that's
used
the
to
only.
price out, and they were always the cheapest, because they used us as a filler in the fall.
Yep,
Right.
yep, yep, they're local, yep.
Didn't have to.
And they were always competitive, so.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they don't just do local work, I mean, they go.
They go all over.
Green Bay, Washington,
I know who they are,
they're
I'm just-
statewide,
Yeah.
so.
Just saying.
Any other discussion? Any motions?
What kind of warranties do they provide, or, you know, what kind of fees and service are there with their work? I'm not familiar with them.
Warranties, is that what the question was?
You know, warranties and
Yeah.
fees, and any kind of permits needed or anything like that?
Oh, no, they come in, they take care of all the road closures at the time they're doing the work, such like that. Warranty issues, they're obviously taken care of, so.
I didn't know if it was a guaranteed, material will stay put for 6 months, 1 year, 3 winters, or what kind of,
Well, ideally, I talked with the owner of the company, and ideally, it's always more ideal to crack fill and then chip seal immediately afterwards.
Yeah, we don't do that always.
But we don't always do that, but to prevent it from alligatoring, basically, and getting worse to the point where we'd have to actually replace the road, I'm not calling it a Band-Aid, but we could possibly look at chip sealing, in the future budget.
Yes.
But we need to stop the water from getting down to the base, creating further problems.
So yes, ideally, as Scott mentioned, chip sealing, crack filling, chip sealing in the same year is your best scenario. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen, so we're just trying to get the cracks filled in to the point of hopefully being able to chip seal some of these same areas in the next year or two, budget allowing. So, I know in the past couple years, there was crack filling done, chip sealing done the following year. And so that's kind of what we've done, is a little alternating from what I understand in the previous years without me being here, was just doing that alternation.
I've never seen any of their work fall out.
Right, yep.
Like you see on the county highways and
Yep,
stuff.
yep. So,
okay.
So this would be the crack and spot sealing at the same time?
Oh, this is just crack filling.
yep, this would just be crack filling. What
Chip
we-
sealing is where they
That's-
finish pea gravel with the tar over
Yep,
top.
kind of what they did over
okay.
on Blue Mountain Street.
Yep.
That's chip sealing, is what that is. Yeah, they put pea gravel and chips on oil.
Great for motorcycles.
I think we've deferred this at some point, some boards earlier.
Yep.
So we've got some catch up to do
Yes,
too.
unfortunately. Yeah, years past, there's only been maybe
Like
6,000,
5,000
5,000 guys, just kind of,
And if you do it every year, that works.
right, yep.
It's when you don't do it, don't
Right.
do it.
Right. At some point, we can get to that catch-up, caught-up stage, and then it'll just be a maintaining, hopefully. But right now, yeah, unfortunately, we're trying to go up the hill right now.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve it and get it done.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
All right. Discussion action on lift station motor repair. Well, it's kind of a must, right?
Yes.
It wasn't bad, you're talking a little over 1,000, right?
No, yeah, so the motor in lift station one is single phase. These would be totally enclosed motors, so if there was ever any type of overflow or pipe burst, the motor is protected a little more. So you can see, Tyler, sorry I didn't get this to you, that would be for one lift station motor, lift station number one, it's $590. And then for the second one, which is a three-phase, that's $600. Right now, we don't have any backup motors, so there is that pucker factor. So it just kind of, if something goes down, we're right there, we can get a motor in and get the next one off to be repaired. This stuff does
Did we
happen.
repair the old ones?
Yes, so, well, one of them was shot and the other one just never had
Okay.
a backup motor. So right now, both motors are operating as they should, but it's just the fact of not having an extra one on the shelf to swap out on a weekend or a holiday or 12 o'clock at night. I mean,
So both of these would be a spare?
yes, yep.
We need a motion for this, or?
Is it
Yeah,
in your budget?
we'll have to take it out of the equipment.
It would, yeah, that's,
Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve both backup motors for station one and station two.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And then as far as the side notes, I know that was gonna come to full village board as well, that I put on there about having the lift station sucked out and then having someone come out and just do an assessment kind of for budgeting purposes. Obviously, that costs some money though as well. like Shelley said, unfortunately, these things weren't kind of figured into the budget. We do have equipment funds that could be utilized for this. I would say sucking the lift stations out is definitely a must. One in Stephanie Court's pretty greasy.
Public Works yet?
Yeah.
Yep, this was all through Public Works. And then, the bar screen that all of our sewage dumps into Dane, Iowa is getting greased up as well. Gets rags, such like that on it. Like, Dane, Iowa guys would not be happy if we just pulled that bar screen, scraped it, and let everything go through. That all goes into their pumps. So, I tried, but
That's the problem downstream.
Yep.
It's gonna cost us when they replace them.
Yeah.
Which, have you talked to Brian lately? They're talking about doing stuff at the lift station.
Over here, I know they got some motor work they're gonna be planning on doing. I talked to, Jeff.
So can we suck it out at the same time? Can we pool in with them?
What's that? They won't be doing suck out. Their lift station's actually good. It's that darn bar screen that catches everything. But they did say that our lift station here is much better than the one in Mazamani. So that made me feel good then.
I'm not gonna say anything. I'll get myself in trouble.
What all is involved in having, I see this LWM,
So that would be coming out, basically just doing an assessment. I know a couple years ago, there was a pump, that went down when Brian was here. We do have a pump that has a knock to it right now. Just kind of doing a good assessment of, okay, is there things we should be budgeting for 2 years, 10 years out? That doesn't necessarily have to be done right now, but I was just looking to have that done for items maybe for 2022 budget, or maybe if we want to work in this $1,000, $1,200 maybe next year, who knows what price will go up, to get some, we can just put in some extra funds for that as well. So I guess the lift station check is more of a wish list, yet kind of a preventative thing though as well. That maybe we can catch something before it's, hits the fan. Literally.
preventative maintenance.
Yeah, yep.
Well, you got it for 2022, so.
Is our pump stations the same as theirs? I mean, do we
On a
buy the
smaller,
same pumps and
on a
stuff?
smaller scale, we don't have the same pumps as what they do, no.
Okay, I just didn't know if we could order them through them, with them?
Oh.
Because they're gonna do a bunch of them, not just,
Yeah, I know they're doing a bunch of work, but yeah, it wouldn't be, I
okay.
don't think you'd get any type of price break as far as that.
Ask.
Yeah, never hurts.
So I think we just look at that in the future, for future budgets then?
Perfect.
Do you want approval for the cross lanes?
Is it possible to have Cross Lanes come and do some?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and have Cross Plains come in and bill for the 6 hours. Start them off. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You get who first? I first. You're second. All right, discussion action on CMAR resolution.
Unfortunately, we're gonna have to probably postpone this because we don't have our, the middle back from the DNR for you to review. To approve this. We're hoping to see it before the meeting.
All right.
Can I get a motion and a, to postpone it?
Make a motion to postpone it.
Second.
Until next meeting, right?
Next meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, discussion action, Public Works summer hours.
For those of you not on Public Works Committee, we started doing summer hours, last week. Looking to take those summer hours to September 30th, actually would be October 1st, because that would be the end of that week. Working hours are 7 till 4:30, Monday through Thursday. That leaves Friday to be a 7 till 11 day. Anything after 11, someone's always on call, just as they are on the weekends and weeknights. The Public Works Committee approved it. I think, James, you just wanted to bring
Up to the board
it,
first.
just to make,
Yeah.
kind of making everybody
No,
aware.
if they approved it, we're good with
Yeah.
it, so.
Unless Tyler, well,
You got any
Tyler's on
problem with
Public
Tyler?
Works.
Summer hours?
I think I cut out of that meeting, my internet connection cut out when that was discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, yeah, it's been done for 3-4 years. There has not been any issues that I know of, unless, James, you've probably been the longest on the committee or on the board.
I don't
Do you feel
know
anything?
if it's been done every year, but, 'cause I think it didn't get approved one other year.
Last year did, anyways, right?
Last year was. Oh, yeah, I don't know.
It's gotten approved, yeah.
I don't think we don't need to do anything if Public Works already approved it.
Well, how long do you want it to go?
October 1st would be it would be a Friday, so that would be switching back after that.
See, I wouldn't be a
It was
fan of it
Memorial
winter
Day,
anyways, because
so-
with snowfall and, yeah, so, okay.
October first is,
Once it's been approved by them, I don't think we need to do anything.
I'd appreciate if it gets formally done here, so we don't have to kick back, so.
I think we did that last year. We made a motion that Public Works
Right.
Committee can do it.
Right.
I'll do it this year, and then we won't have to, I'll make a motion that Public Works Committee can decide that every year.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Okay. Discussion action regarding village board minutes, 4/13/2021 and 5/4/2021. April 3rd was 13th, yeah, missed one. Everybody read the prospective changes?
Yeah, I make a motion, we, keep the minutes as they are with no changes.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, I'll make a motion, we approve May 4th minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know real quick.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the minutes? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, discussion action on treasurer financial reports.
All right, your treasurer's report is through the month of April. At this point, we're sitting with 1.45 million in all of our accounts. Debt payments were made in this month, hitting electric, water, and sewer. You'll actually see those on your revenue and expense reports for those funds. The revenue and expenses, those are through May, and we are normally would expect to be about 41%, with the exception of the general fund. General fund revenues are sitting at 26%, with expenses at 35.5%. The note is the miscellaneous revenue in the general fund. Our sales on Wisconsin surplus were $32,000. That's inflating that account. You'll see that sitting at 480%. And our recycling grant did come in slightly higher than budget, which I'm happy for, a whole $65 more. And in June, we just received our dividend check from the league insurance. He dropped it off today, so in June you'll see that at that point for an additional $1,300 in the fund. Our electric revenues are sitting at 37%, so still slightly down, with expenses at 36%. Our water revenues are at 41.3%, with expenses at 45%, which, yes, the expenses are higher, but again, it's that debt that is hitting the books at this point. Our sewer revenues are at 43%, with expenses at 35%. Nothing that's unusual. Again, that electric fund where we're sitting down, you look at the percentages on the revenue categories, residential and small commercial is what is down. So that is what I have for your financials right now.
Maybe I missed it while you're talking, is there any reason the street part and street paint is called out?
No, you know what? I don't know why that is.
Okay, all right.
It shouldn't be highlighted in yellow.
That's Doesn't seem odd to me, Dad, but okay.
Just pointing it out.
Did a nice great job of doing that.
And with the audit numbers coming in, I'm hoping for Public Works' next meeting, I'll have carryover funds, at least for that area to bring in, and every other fund at next meeting to approve to bring in.
So I have a question on Wisconsin Rural Water Association
Oh,
Incorporated.
those aren't invoices, they're not quite there
I'm
yet.
sorry.
Okay. Almost, that's next. Any other questions on financials?
No.
A motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the financial report for April 2021. No, we're in July, June. What month are we in?
Kind of April, May.
Yeah.
April, treasurer, May, revenue.
Yeah.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right. Financial.
Okay, now, you had a question on,
Yeah, I thought this was gonna be a free deal.
Nope, that was one that Tony and I went to this past, Thursday. This was a different one that Scott and Tony.
Oh, okay, and,
This
okay,
was an online.
so what kind of learning was obtained? I just kind of,
Just basically a general on wastewater pumps, all that, gases and stuff like that.
okay,
Something that none of us have ever actually taken, surprisingly.
okay. So you learned something.
Absolutely, yeah, it wasn't a wasted, time, that's for sure.
Good.
What's the, on electrical, 8,951%?
is that on the revenue expenses?
Yeah. Electric fund.
That is one of the Vanguard expenses, so,
Yeah.
all of those that are in that light brown are part of the big total Vanguard has. Tried breaking that out based on last year for the first time, usually they were a zero column. So, that's all part of Vanguard, which is
Okay.
sitting at overall 32% so far for the year, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's probably just maybe not allocated right on our side.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
like it's
Okay.
the first time in budgeting that I threw numbers in there,
Yep.
so. Let's get it a little down there. Police expense, just so you know, is at 41%, they're right on target for the year.
I wanna make a motion, we pay the bills as presented.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Was that that was on the financials or the invoices?
Invoice.
That's what I thought, okay, so we're good. All right. You found it, fine, yeah. All right. Committee reports. Vanguard, now, I actually missed the last Vanguard. Sean's not on,
Yeah, I'm trying to,
but Scott was there.
I was there. Basically just a get to know one another type
Yeah.
situation. The only, I thought it was, she did a nice job with presenting financials. I'd never met Lydia.
Yep.
Seems like she's right on top of what she's doing. And, there's just one compliance issue, and that's the hourly rate. I'll be following up on that. We'll talk about that at the next meeting.
Okay.
It need to be talked about here, but,
Yep.
like an internal control thing that they need to put in place, so.
Okay.
Shelley, Sean said he was trying to get in, but he's having problems.
Oh,
Is
you
he-
said earlier.
Okay, yeah, he had to cut out for Mazo, but he just text me, said he's trying to get in, but having problems. Does he have to be?
We'll try to get it in and we'll come back to him.
Yeah, I don't know what else to.
Okay.
And then the next meeting, let me get to it here. Do I have it even?
Matt, can you take a picture of your, front of yours for the Zoom phone number and the password?
Oh, yes.
Talking to him?
Where's the
Oh,
second
here,
sheet?
you're at the end now. I'm trying.
There it is.
I'm trying to connect.
Could be an internet issue.
John, are you there?
Yep,
There
I'm
we
here.
go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, electrical superintendent report.
Yeah, I had a heck of a time there. What's that?
We're looking for your Vanguard report from you.
Yeah,
You got it?
not a whole lot's been going on. We did have to do some work out at the high school, here end of last week, and finished it up week, rerouting a cable, that goes right where they're gonna be digging, but they didn't realize they needed power for, some soccer games, so we kinda had to push things forward on that to get them, kind of a new feed to the ball field. Also, out on Highway F, I got a bridge project that's starting up. We had to move out some wire for them, so, they can get their cranes to drive pilings. Other than that, that's for the most part pretty much it. We think we got a candidate for our job opening. Offered him the job tonight and just kind of waiting on his response. So,
Okay.
most of our time's been up in Mazo with that Highway 14 project and a couple other ones up there, so.
All right, perfect. All right, thanks.
You betcha, have a great night.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, man, you know, I'm. Just saying. Black Earth Joint Fire District,
We have a next meeting date for Vanguard. We have a next meeting date.
Vanguard, that's what I was looking for.
yeah,
And we got one. Well, I can't
I don't
find
have it
it.
offhand because I wasn't
I
there.
can't find the paper.
We'll
Sorry.
get it to you.
We'll get it, okay.
Fire district, there was nothing major, just regular that went on. Nothing to report out of the ordinary. Dane, Iowa?
Met on May 20th, basically just set up positions, presidents, Peter Huebner,
Huebner?
yeah, vice president's Bob, not really sure his last name. I took the secretary position, and Kate from Arena took the treasurer position. There were no discharge violations, just an update on the phosphorus credit purchase agreement. We're just waiting for, more information on, Wolf property, and there was, I think that was it. So I've nothing really to report there. The crew got a 3% increase, straight across the board. Bills were paid. The true-up should have started. I'm not sure how much came back yet. They just said it was coming, but I seen the Dane Iowa bills, it was only 2,000, so we must have got some credit on there.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is total, but, it's already coming off our bills.
The water bills went for us? All right.
It comes off the Dane Iowa bill.
Oh,
So they don't take all of it away, but they take some every month for, I don't know how many months, depending on how much it is. I'll get the total one. Said there was no discharge violations. The next meeting is June 17th at 6:30 PM.
there's no economic development meeting? There was no emergency management yet, right?
No,
So there's one
that,
coming up, because you
yeah.
did the work.
that's right, the hazard mitigation
Yep.
planning is beginning June 16th, one of those three dates.
Yep.
16th and 17th, right, the county?
Yep.
Yeah, you can jump on either one. They give
Okay,
you three
so-
options to jump on.
There's an evening, morning, and afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, I got the one on the 16th, that was one meeting, and then
Two on the 17th.
two on the 17th.
Yeah, one in the evening.
Are they gonna be they're gonna be the same
Yeah,
presentation?
so if you can't make one day, you can try one.
Thank you, that was my
other.
question, okay.
EMS.
So pretty much business as usual. We motioned through all the chair, secretary positions. Nothing changed. The people that are in those positions are still in those positions. Bill paying, et cetera. The thing that did come out of it that might be of note here is there is a recruitment issue in general. Recruitment's down. People aren't volunteering like they used to. So they're kind of looking at ways to try and bring that recruitment level up. One thing that was thrown out was possibly throwing something on the different communities' websites. There wasn't anything solid that came out of that, it was just kind of a thought exercise. So that might be coming down the line as something to put out, this recruitment notice or something, or that the EMS team is looking for help, et cetera. Next meeting is July 8th at 6:30.
All right. Terry Moyer is gone. Library director.
Yeah, so we met on May 18th. It was a pretty uneventful meeting, but we talked about reopening quite a bit, which we, did today. Today was our first day of being open without an appointment needed.
So nice.
And we also appointed a new secretary, so Munson is now, our secretary. And I guess on a couple of more fun notes, we are doing a community art project, which you're all invited to participate in. So we have craft kits that you can pick up for everyone in your household, and then come, and it's a big flower chain. So you make a paper flower, and then you add it to the chain. So hopefully we'll have a long one by the time we're done. What was that?
When is that?
It's now, and it's kind of ongoing, so.
Okay.
Yeah. And summer library program is starting as well. And every badge and activity log that we receive, from participants, we're making a $1 donation to the Dane County Humane Society.
Okay, very cool.
And our next meeting is June 16th at 7 PM.
Go ahead.
Our next meeting is June 16th
Okay.
at 7 PM.
Awesome. Thank you.
My son was really excited to show me the flower he made today.
Oh, yeah?
I appreciate that, thank you.
Good, yeah.
All right, Public Works.
Yes, we met on, Wednesday, I'm sorry, I have the wrong one in front of me.
Monday.
On Monday, May 17th at 1 PM via Zoom. Talked about the action on the rescue plan funding, which we kind of tossed tonight, and it looks like, you know, there's $140,000 over a 2-year period of time. There's a lot of things that qualify, but, you know, one of the driving factors is our deficit, and so we'll just have to deal with that as it comes along, but that'll eat up all $140,000 if we took it to the electric deficit. So that's just something for everybody to think about. Talked about the Cleary Street, we got that taken care of. Nothing other than just getting into place and getting used to being chairman of a committee again. Thought there wouldn't be much of a curve, but there is.
Right.
Let's see, was there anything? John Carlson retired, Wade's leaving, he talked about that. New globe in Vets Park was damaged, and that's being repaired.
That's done, yep.
That's done. The streetlight replacement cost for Thorson Drive kind of just got put away. We don't feel that it's time to do that. There is a streetlight map, if anybody would care to go to look at that. I think that's, Shelley, you've got that, if anybody wants to take a look at how that's laid out. Just other than that, anything you can add, Matt, to what we,
Mitch told me not to say anything.
I
said Mitch told me not to say anything. Mitch who? The only news I got, ACB signs are in, so we're gonna be working on getting those put up, once locates and stuff like that get cleared. Was out for a walk in Red Hawk subdivision last night, noticed in tall grass, there seemed to be a muddy, little bit of water ponding. So we did find a shutoff that had been tweaked open a little bit on that vacant lot. So maybe that's something that could have attributed to some water loss that we had last year. Not sure how long it's been happening, but I guess we'll keep an eye on that. They will be coming, Rural Water is gonna come in on June 8th to kind of maybe do a little bit of an assessment on the system, see if we do have any joint leaks, such like that, to help out with that water audit, since it was at 17% for the loss. And I think the only thing I got for you is if you've talked to Itch yet about his...
I have not gotten back.
Okay.
Remind me this later the week, I'll give him a call.
Okay. Other than that, anyone got any questions for Public Works?
Oh, you gotta have a little bit more, Nick. I didn't mean that.
I had the timer on.
How did the lawnmower work?
Good. Yep.
Did it do everything you wanted it to, and does it mow as good as the other one?
There's one machine has better things than the other machine, so it's kind of one of those things. It's always, if you could build the perfect one, it would be multicolored.
Right.
So.
All right.
What's the next meeting date?
Monday the 17th. Oh, no, that's when the last
Nope,
one
it
was.
should be, June 21st.
June 21st at 1 o'clock.
At 1 PM, we're gonna shoot.
We're gonna try to shoot for in person too.
Yeah, we'll be here.
Try to get away from some of this Zoom stuff.
Parks Committee. All right, so I was nominated and accepted the committee chair. Moving on from there, we had a brief discussion about the elementary school, but given the current state of affairs, there really wasn't much we could talk about. We talked about and made a motion on the Cooper property donation bonds for so we talked about that. And then we talked about the trail extension. So we have a proposal from Town and Country to do for $10,000 to $12,000 to do an assessment on what it would take to implement our section of the trail. Includes looking at the land, all the assessments, DNR, et cetera, et cetera. We've decided to postpone making any decision on that until December, where we could look at including that into next year's budget. And we're also looking at grants that could potentially cover that cost as well.
Right.
So sounds like we want to move on it, but just gotta
Do you have any
We
grants out
should
there?
have the money to do it.
Yeah. You know any grants out there for that type of stuff, Nick? Probably, yeah.
Would the no stewardship cover that?
It may, I'd have to double check that. I know there's a lot of grants out there once you kind of do this assessment, like, the grant pool opens up for construction wise. I'd have to dive into a little bit more for covering the actual assessment itself.
And, park and trail grant, is it the park grant that's open up again from the county level?
Yep, that,
I think it's deadlined already.
yeah, I was gonna say that's
Both of them have.
either deadline or just about to be deadline here in like real soon.
Your company finds you big work.
All right, I'm sorry, anything else?
Yeah, just a little bit more, sorry. So we did talk about treating the village parks. There's discussion around, you know, with the COVID and actually having games, how much we wanted to invest in this year. We've already had one spraying done at Vets Park, and we made a motion to approve 3 more treatments for Vets Park, from Olson Tune. Is there anything I left out of that?
No, you got it pretty much covered, I think,
Okay.
for parks.
Yeah, and then equipment, we're gonna move the school bus out of, community park, we're gonna get rid of that, and then we're going to put on, look at next year's budget about replacement around that. Let me see. Talked about trees, removing the trees, getting the fascia put on. Grand opening, we're discussing around August 14th to do a grand opening in community park for that whole area. There's different possibilities, we're still looking at those. We're outfitting the concession stand, or it has been outfitted, so Home Talent and Tyler Munson donated several pieces of equipment, so thank you, Tyler. And we're going to try to get a list together for additional needs for that.
It wasn't me, it was, the youth baseball.
Baseball.
Okay, so thank you to them. And then we just talked about general policies and procedures, for the concession stand use. And we moved to use the current policies for that are already in place. So, next meeting is June 14th at 6 p.m., with Zoom being a option, with in-person being preference recommended.
All right, police committee, Seth?
We had a meeting on Wednesday, May 12th at 5 p.m. with Zoom. I was nominated and accepted the position as the chair of the committee. We approved the minutes. There was a discussion about our speed board, which I'm sure you've all noticed has been moving around different locations. Police are happy with the way that it's performing now that it's got the new battery. And some of the, you can all take a look, but there's some interesting statistics about just how fast people are bolting.
Scott?
I try to see what I can make it do.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, did you guys get the statistics for, KP? You remember? I can ask.
No, this one was more when it was located, when they were doing the test of it over here across the street.
Okay.
From April 11th to the 20th, in the 1200 block, and, out of 20,432 vehicles registered, with 19 of those exceeding 16 miles per hour plus, is what the board came back with. So it's all, you know, when you place it, we do get good information from it. Now that the unit is working, it's being moved around. I noticed it today, or was it?
I noticed it.
It's somewhere over here.
Somewhere.
It's on KP, it's
Yeah, so if anybody gets contacted by anybody in the village, it is a portable unit, and it does help keep the speed down.
It does.
So, if anybody has, if you hear from any residents that there's a problem and they'd like to have that board moved there, please let us know, because we can do that pretty easily. There was 202 calls, 184 by contract deputies, 18 by others, meaning other county. 7 neighbor incidents were all separate incidences, and I guess there was a quarry blasting out near Red Hawk. shook the earth pretty good, and there was no real warning, and I think that's been addressed there was a phone call or two about that. So I don't think that'll happen without, notice again. It really shouldn't happen without a notice. Most of the fraud has gone up, and online, it's gone up terribly. There's been,
drive-off.
and gas drive-offs, at Quick Trip. And then, there was one guy driving, there's something about a charter driving around, it was reported as suspicious activity. There's going to be correct me if I'm wrong here, but this SP hospital meeting,
It was
on the 20th.
Yeah.
And so I don't really, I missed what that was all about. So I can't really report on it. One of the things I'd like the board to start thinking about is possibility of, and I don't know if we've got the amount of crime, to put money into getting a wireless system that will monitor the activities in our number one used park, for, something we go back on. I'm not sure we're at that point, personally, I don't know if we're at that point where we should be sticking a bunch of money into electronics and surveillance and all of that, but it's something that the police, are kind of for, I would think. We're gonna keep researching that, there's other ways,
If you get Wi-Fi there, the rest is cheap.
I think we have Wi-Fi through the library, because they did that extension last year that was supposed to be able to reach that park, so I guess we'd have to go test that theory, but.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep researching that. There's been some things brought up about signage. You're being monitored at all times, whatever. I don't know if we should go to the full, but it's just something to think about. Dummy cameras, trail cameras, wired system, wireless system, and USL may have an option for a wireless hotspot there too. Sidewalk at the shoebox, that's still going on. Public Works meeting coming up, and this is something we need to put on the agenda, for discussion on how to best handle any additional street lighting needs, but I don't foresee any, but it's on there. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, yes?
Sorry, you said the sidewalk at the shoebox is still going on, what's that? I don't.
It's been an ongoing, discussion for
Safety concerns,
getting across 14.
78 safely.
78.
Okay.
Canal Street, and by DOT standards, you can't have a crosswalk go into a street. It has to go to a pad on a curb.
Right. And
So that's what that's about. It's been going on for 3 years.
yeah. It just really kind of relies on itch.
It does, and he came around. He
Okay.
said he was willing to discuss it, and the biggest thing now, does he continue it to the front of his store?
Right.
So I gotta get back with it. That's
Okay.
the biggest holdup right now.
All right. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, June 16th at 5 p.m. It's a combo Zoom and in-person meeting. We do encourage the in-person, but it is Cartman's day off, so we kind of made a exception for Mr. Cartman to do it from his home. And that's it, basically.
So just going back to the best part real quick, are we seeing criminal activity there that would warrant?
Well, we've had the bathrooms, put rocks in the toilets and
the light fixtures.
and somebody busted out, a pretty expensive part of the glass over by the tennis court. And so we're just kind of keeping an eye on it,
Similar problems down at the concession stand.
Well, yeah, we got the new concession.
Right, and we were
Spent
broken
$1 million on
in
that
there
concession.
at the baseball field, and I'd hate to see, the new concession stand be,
Yeah.
so something we need to all just kind of, keep it in the back of the mind that We may have to have cameras, I don't know. But that's my report.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Any other business could be brought before the board for future agendas?
Just out of curiosity, the, recycle place called us and they wanted to charge us more for recycling. And remember that a couple months ago? So now they're coming around with garbage trucks and throwing all the recyclables in garbage trucks. So I don't,
Regularly, because
yeah,
he does.
the last two pickups were in
Right,
garbage.
I think that's a manpower issue, so the stuff is still being recycled.
Yeah, that's what they said, they didn't have enough people to drive the trucks.
Correct,
But they
if you
have
got
enough people to
phone
drive
calls.
garbage trucks that take CDLs over a pickup truck that doesn't.
What's that now, sorry?
Kind of weird that they'll use a garbage truck to pick it up, but the trucks that they were using, they were just trucks and trailers where you didn't need a CDL, but you need a CDL to drive a garbage truck. So I kind of thought that was a little
I
mysterious.
don't know, I think it's
So I
the,
think it's something we should talk, at least, go into a little bit.
right, it's the fact of one person versus when they had the recycle truck, there's 2 trucks, 2 people. So now it's just, there's typically a garbage truck driver
So this,
and
I
a,
mean, actually, this is for something we put on the
Yep.
agenda.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's something we want, I'm just bringing it up, that they're coming around in garbage trucks now,
You
so.
wanna follow through, and if we need to put it on the agenda, we will, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's valuable to know, and so.
Yeah, I think it was gonna be long
Right.
term.
All right, anything else?
yeah, it's still being recycled.
Yeah.
Or they say.
You don't know that they are.
We're being told it is.
Yeah.
I'm glad I
Anything
wasn't
else?
the only one that noticed that, James. I called them I was like, wait a minute, my recycling just got thrown in the trash truck.
Well, just
There-
brought up the
there
one
are-
that they-
There are reports that they have to make, if they're getting paid to recycle stuff, they have to be recycling it. The fines for misreporting that are pretty hefty with the DNR.
Okay, that's good to know.
All right, anything else that can be put on the agenda for futures? All right, next meeting, July 6th.
Do we need to look
We need to move that, right?
That's what I was just looking at.
Because that's concert in the park.
Yeah.
So what's better, Monday or Wednesday?
So Monday, we're closed because of the Fourth of July holiday.
Oh, you can come in for that. I say it's Wednesday then.
Well, that becomes a double time, I think, right, Shelley?
No.
Wait, July 7th?
July seventh?
Is everybody all right with that?
6 p.m.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine with
Do
that.
we need a motion?
No, but I think I'd like to also ask about, setting up a personnel meeting.
Okay.
This month or next month?
Nope, it's possible. Well, in the month of June.
On the 7th of June, I'm having $6,000 worth of dental work done, so I may not say a whole lot.
Perfect, definitely.
Seventh of June it is.
Night of the 7th.
Like, 21st, we have a lot of
What?
meetings the week of the 14th, so I don't want to say like that one. But with June 21st,
What day is that?
That's Monday.
Wednesday,
Okay,
whichever.
yeah.
Sure.
What's this being discussed, Shelley?
A personnel meeting,
Okay,
On June 21st.
Okay.
Monday.
So we working around Public Works, or you wanna do it later in the day, or you wanna,
Public Works, I set for the 16th.
I'm sorry.
Wait, no, it's 21st, you said.
Right, I know, but Scott just asked about working it around Public Works,
Public Works is 16th, she
so.
said.
That's the 21st, so that's why I was, so the Public Works is gonna be the 16th?
Yeah, that's what was said.
No, it was set for the
I-
21st,
Except for the first.
at 1 PM.
Oh.
yeah,
I've got it down for the 21st.
Okay.
The personnel still works later that day.
Yeah,
I mean, we could still,
Public Works at 1, so
Yeah.
that would interfere later in the night.
do them both.
good.
So you wanna do the 21st at what time?
6?
Be fine with me.
Kelly, is that something where I'm gonna need to, should I be involved in the entire meeting or attend and just, recuse myself during portions of it, or?
I think you will have to excuse yourself during any decision-making,
Or not make a decision, okay.
or abstain from it.
Yeah, abstain, you can be present,
Abstain.
you just have to abstain.
So this is 6 o'clock, I'm sorry?
Yep,
All right,
thank you.
all right, next thing is.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Third. All in favor? Aye.
Brammerson.
I was the third.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Right away then?
Matt, you got your light on.
What? Oh.
You're shining.